Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Today I have Jessie from UTS and Anthony from UTS. All of us are NCP scholars. Anthony is 2019, I believe.
Yep.
Well as Jessie?
Yep.
Yeah. And today we're going to be speaking about your NCP experiences, not mine just yet. And we'll get into some of those topics and maybe some other... damn it. I did not open my full screen. Okay, no worries. Okay, good. All right. So, hey, Jessie, would you like to give a little quick introduction about yourself and your NCP experiences thus far?
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Jessie and I am technically now a final year law and social and political sciences student at UTS. I was, until the end of March, based in Taipei in Taiwan, where I started my NCP last year in July. I've done a little bit of all of the components. So I've done a bit of language training. I did my exchange semester at National Taiwan University. I did a couple of internships and sort of volunteer stuff, which was really fun. And then I was in the middle of doing some more language training before I had to come home. And I was planning to relocate to Malaysia, actually, to finish my last internship before coming home to Sydney to finish my degree. So everything's sort of been put on hold. So now I'm home, trying to keep myself busy. But yeah, it's been really nice to be home.
Yeah. All right. And Anthony?
Nice. Yeah, my name's Anthony. I'm a 2019 Colombo Plan Scholar. I was chosen for China, and I've been there since July last year. I've been back home since late March. So I first started with my language component for 2 months in Guilin. That was super fun over there, and did that for 2 months and went to Shanghai in September to start my study abroad until around December. And yeah, at the beginning of the year, I was starting my internship, but that only lasted for about a week before I had to come home from China because of COVID-19. But then I was able to head out to Taiwan, which was pretty fun as well, to study at NTNU MTC, the Mandarin Training Center. That was really fun as well. So yeah, I'd love to talk more about it.
Did you see Jessie whilst you were in Taiwan, or was she somewhere else?
Oh yeah, so I actually saw Jessie when I arrived in Taipei, and we caught up together and had lunch, and she showed me around the place, which was super nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see so many people come to Taiwan, especially post like the Hong Kong situation. A lot of the scholars got sent home or had to relocate as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got, luckily in sort of early February, we got to meet so many of the scholars. I know Millie from Hong Kong. We had a lot of the 2020 Hong Kong scholars, I think, also in Taiwan. Yeah,
Some
and
China
Anthony
scholars as well, I think.
Yeah, a couple of China scholars. So yeah, it was really cool to see so many people in Taiwan, I think, because we had about 7 in 2019, but we were all quite scattered. So there would only ever be maybe 3 or 4 of us at once. So it felt like a really small like family, I guess, but we would always have people kind of come for weekend visits or visa runs. So it was really nice to kind of see other scholars out and about and show them around. So I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed the most about NCP. Like, everyone's in different places, but there are heaps of opportunities to catch up and to like get to know people and what they've been doing as well.
Yeah, I think so as well. When we got the scholarship when we were down in Canberra, I was talking to Jessie. I'm like, oh yeah, I might make it over to Taiwan or not, because with those visas in China, you can only go in there once and stay there, so it's very hard to go to other places. So once I actually got the opportunity to go to study Mandarin in Taiwan, I was really grateful to go and see Jessie as well. And yeah, live in Taiwan for a bit, around about 3 weeks before coming home. Yeah.
All right. Well, both of you, I know that already started your study components, and you already started studying in NTU as well as in Shanghai Uni.
Yeah.
So would you like to talk a bit about your experiences studying, any differences to UTS and in Australia, or did you find it pretty much similar in some other ways?
Yeah. Anthony, did you want to?
Okay, yeah, sure. So in China, I studied at Shanghai University, and definitely there is a kind of Western and Chinese way of teaching. I think they both have their good and bad components, I think, in some ways. Shanghai Uni, I found that the lecturers there, they were really knowledgeable, and we often, it was more of a passive kind of experience where we would listen to the professor, which was great. And also they encouraged some discussions within the class. So I really enjoyed all my classes there. I learned about the business culture in China, which was very different to the Western way of doing business, and also foreign relations, which was very interesting. We got to look at the Chinese side and their arguments about their foreign relations and the way they handle it as opposed to the West. So yeah, really interesting times over there with the teachers and also with the students over there. Unfortunately, our classes were separated from the Chinese students, so didn't get to talk to them as much in a classroom kind of setting, but that was all right. I got to talk to other folk from Europe and also America.
Were your classes in English then, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so they were all in English, no Chinese, because a lot of the students there, they only had like maybe basic or a very limited amount of understanding of Chinese. Yeah.
And Jessie?
Yeah, I think my experience is similar but a little bit different to Anthony's. So I also studied courses that were taught in English. Apologies, I'm going to silence my phone. But yeah, a lot of the courses were super interesting. Well, I guess it a little bit different to Anthony's experience in that I was studying, I was doing some law electives. So I got to take some international law electives that were really interesting and unique to Asia and the region. Those are some things that aren't necessarily offered at UTS in terms of law electives. So I got to take one that was taught by a visiting Dutch professor, and it was in AI and robot law, which was fascinating. And then there was another subject I got to take, which was about international like trade law and that sort of stuff, but with a very unique kind of regional perspective. I think it was really interesting being taught by both foreign visiting professors as well as local Taiwanese professors with heaps of expertise in international law, because you kind of forget that the international law perspective is so diverse, I guess, in every country. Like the laws themselves are the same, but each country's interpretation and the interests of each country are quite different. And I think for Australians, like perhaps I can only really speak for myself, but I found that because there is so much discussion about the relationship between China and other countries in the world, the smaller countries, including like the ASEAN bloc, as well as Taiwan, often get left out of conversation. So it was really interesting to see a lot of those perspectives in terms of international law. And of course, in order to be able to be on exchange at NTU, I had to also take a communication subject or a social political science. So I got to take one that was called Seminar on East Asian News, which was really interesting. It was taught by a like working in the field journalist, Taiwanese professor, and he was incredible. Like he had so much knowledge as well as just really practical insights. And so each class didn't really feel like a lecture or a class. We would have heaps of discussion, which was so different to some of the other law classes, about like foreign affairs and current news events and how things are portrayed in the media, as well as I got a really great, like thorough introduction to like Taiwanese history and politics and like Taiwanese media in general, and how Taiwan is perceived to the rest of the world and how Taiwan perceives the rest of the world. So yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. I imagine most people who go on exchange would have a similar sort of comparative experience, I guess, but I found it really, really cool because it's not something that we probably would have been able to do if I was to take those electives back at home in Sydney.
Was it the same for you, Anthony, with like a lot of discussion-based learning in your own class, or is it more so traditional?
Yeah. So I feel like the teacher would, some classes, they would read off the slides and give a lecture, but some of my other classes, like Chinese culture and also the foreign relations class, we had a lot of discussion with the students. What are their perspectives? For example, so like Chinese culture, the American students might say, oh, we do this and this in America, and the others, and then the Chinese teacher would give some perspective on like Chinese culture. We do it this way.
Yep.
And some everyone had a really questioning mindset. We asked questions like, for example, what is the hygiene situation in China? Why do some people maybe spit on the street? And then the Chinese teacher would give their perspective on why maybe the elderly generation might do that. And I guess all of us learned something new and understood others people's ways of life. Like it might be different, and we're in their country, and we should respect their way of life, and then just reflect on that. Because yeah, we all have different cultures and values, and we all see we need to like coexist in this world. So we really need to understand their way of life, and yeah. So I think I found that really interesting in that way.
With Jessie, I'm actually quite interested in the subject around East Asian media.
Yeah.
Do you see, was there any difference like compared to Australian media, or like anything you found really shocking or surprising that you didn't know before?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. Like, I don't know if it was different to Australian media because we didn't necessarily study how the media itself works, but I think it was really interesting to just have to look at different topics from a Taiwanese perspective. So a lot of them were really contentious things that involve lots of different countries in the region. So, for example, something that has been hotly debated for ages, and we got a chance to look at the legal case as well, is the case of like the South China Sea claims. Now each ASEAN country has a different claim, and we were kind of looking at it from a zoomed out perspective to kind of put all the different claims together and kind of see the validity of what each country was trying to like assert was theirs, or like and see how that also affected the economic and political relationships. So I think that was really interesting. Other things, like we would look at how obviously US-China relationship affects all the countries in the region because it is such a historically significant relationship. So it was really cool to see it that way. And because we had a lot of international students in the class, but there were also a lot of local students. So I think that's something that was quite different to what Anthony's experience was all of my classes had almost like a half-half mix of local students and international or exchange students, which is really cool. All of the local students were definitely like kind of the best of the best. Their English was amazing. They had studied, some of them had studied abroad. A lot of them were in their postgraduate, so they were taking these as like master's subjects or as postgraduate subjects rather than undergraduate. But a lot of the international students, including myself, were still undergraduate students. So yeah, it was a really nice balance and really interesting to hear the different perspectives from students like in Europe or from North America. There were a couple of other Aussie students and students from New Zealand, which was really nice. A lot of students from Korea and a lot of ASEAN countries too, so like Indonesia, Vietnam. Yeah, so that was really, really interesting. So I think it was more so just being able to kind of learn more about Asian news. I think before coming to Taiwan, I did follow news and sort of world news just because I was interested, but I guess I didn't realize how much Australian media focuses on domestic issues and domestic news, and we don't really get a kind of holistic or like really broad ranging kind of dose of news unless you're actively like reading foreign media, which I think is interesting. And I feel like that's something that I've kept now returning. Like I try and check not only like Australian news outlets, but also like stuff in different regions so that I'm getting a better idea of what's happening around the entire world rather than just like sort of domestic policy and domestic issues.
Yeah, I think that's so true as well. I've followed a bit more on international news, and also on that point of guess with universities, it's kind of refreshing to go on exchange and get another way of teaching, because personally at UTS I've spent around about 3 years over there, and I've gotten used to the way they have been teaching, their assessments and how the teachers go through the syllabus. I think going to China and getting their perspectives and having their academics teach us and give their perspective is really great and refreshing, to not just be educated under one system in the Australian way of thinking, get into that bubble mindset. So I think, going to China was a great, refreshing experience academically.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting you mentioned how assignments or like assessments were really different. I found that there was a lot less structure in Taiwan, but I think maybe that's also because the professors all knew that we were exchange students anyway, so they wanted us to just get sort of more like holistic learning rather than just be like tested on a checklist or something. But yeah, we found a lot of the assessments were really flexible or required a lot of sort of self-motivation or or like they required, like you to self-drive what you wanted to write about and research about. And perhaps that's because the subject was geared towards postgraduate and master's students, where that requires a lot of like individual research. But I found that really, really cool. And it really helped me develop sort of research skills that I think will be really handy for when I do my honours as well. Just being able to like kind of create your own assessments almost, or like come up with like or for me, especially in law and political science, so coming up with your own parameters that you want to explore and then kind of seeing where things fall. And doing that sort of research I found really, really interesting.
I guess that goes into your day-to-day life. How'd you guys, what's your day-to-day life every day? Like I'm assuming you all lived in student accommodation and then commuting to university, but then your life would be much different too here, because I'm going to assume both of you probably still live at home. So then, there's a lot more autonomy, a lot more freedom. What did that look like when you were over there, Anthony?
So I was living in student accommodation in Shanghai Uni. I think we live like a king over there. Like, it's really good. You get one room to yourself. The local students, they actually, around about 6 of them fit into one room. So we're living really, really well over there. And so we lived on campus, and then to the canteen over there was only like a 5-minute walk, and then another 10-minute walk to the classroom. So it was really easy every morning. They start really early in China. Their classes normally start around 8 o'clock in the morning. So being on campus was definitely an advantage. And a lot of the international students, they live on campus as well. So we had a great community over there. And a majority of the local students actually live on campus, as opposed to Australia. A lot of Australian students, personally, like myself, live at home. So I think we're lacking, I would say most uni students agree, is like we're lacking like a campus kind of life in Sydney, maybe, mostly the Sydney universities. It's been great and refreshing to live on campus and to talk to other students, study, eat food together in the canteen, and also go to class together.
I think my experience was similar to that. So when I first arrived, I wasn't actually living on campus because I arrived in July and the semester didn't start until September. And so I was in sort of an Airbnb on my own, a little bit outside of Taipei city. So it was in New Taipei, Xinbei. But that was really cool because I got to sort of experience a little bit more of the city itself. But I was commuting every day to go to language training. So that was really fun. But once I moved on to campus in like the end of August, it was so much fun. Really similar to what Anthony was saying. We were in I was in an international student dorm, but there was like a local student block right next to us. And so a lot of my friends were local students, which was really fun. And yeah, everything was really close by. It was so bizarre for me to have experienced that campus life, I think, because at UTS it's so scattered. So it was really cool that like you could leave class and there would be stuff to do on campus. I was blown away. I remember my first week on campus, I was like, I cannot believe how huge the Taipei campus is. Like it would probably take you maybe half an hour to walk from one side to the other side. So a lot of people had bikes, and so or you could my favorite thing, and I still miss it now, is Taiwan's U-bike system. So it's like rental bikes. And so you could like rent a bike from one end to the other end. And so yeah, there was lots of people on bikes, people on skateboards, and it was just such a cool way to experience living, I think, because we didn't really have access to kitchens and stuff like that. Similarly, we had our own dorms and bathrooms and like a single room, etc. But there's just not much cooking because outside food is so cheap and
so good as well.
Yeah, it's a really communal experience as well. Like you go and get food with friends and have a chat and sit down, and then when you go home you just sleep. So to be completely honest, like our dorm rooms are great, but I didn't spend much time in my room. I spent a lot of it like in classes or just hanging out after class with different people, or going to different like cafes or like places to explore. So yeah, that was really, really fun. And there's just, I don't know if it was the same in Shanghai, I imagine similarly, but there's always something to do in Taipei. So honestly, like every afternoon, if you're finding yourself a little bit bored, you just need to go, or in Taiwan, we're obviously able to use Facebook. So we would just jump on Facebook and you could just set it to like Taipei area and get at least 10 events come up, and you could just pick any of them and just go and check it out. There's also heaps of like art. So the thing with Taipei, at least, is that there's 3 or 4, I think maybe 3 really big universities. So National Taiwan Normal University, National Taiwan University, and Taipei Tech or Taiwan Tech. So 3 really big universities in like the same area. And so the Gongguan sort of Taipei building area is where you'll just see students like all year round, and it's just students everywhere. There's heaps of things to do, like arty places to go to. And so yeah, it was just really fun being in sort of like the hustle bustle of Taipei City.
Yeah, I found the same in Shanghai as well. Just there was not a moment where there was nothing to do or I was bored. Definitely when I visited Taipei over those 3 weeks, I was never bored. There was just so much to explore within such a small place within Taipei. I went hiking, and also there was just a lot of food places to explore. So I really enjoyed that, and I missed that a lot. And funny you said with the bikes as well, at Shanghai University, there were a lot of share bikes down at my student accommodation. So I would just hop down in the morning. If I was late, I'd just cycle my bike to class. So yeah, it was just really fun, and I missed that quite a bit. So I think going on exchange in Asia, whether it be Taipei, Shanghai, it's just an awesome experience, something very different from the Australian student life. Yeah.
Yeah, if you were cycling around Sydney CBD, it'd be more like trying to avoid hazard, trying to not get run over, and then like if you cycle just like 5 minutes, you're already to class.
Exactly.
I'm guessing you would just really enjoy the scenery around university.
Yeah. Like National Taiwan University, we had a lake on campus. Called, I think it was like Drunken Moon Lake. It was like the romantic name or whatever. But there's just like, and there was like what's it called? Like an organic.
There's like a farm. There's an
organic like experimental farm on campus for like biology students or science students. It's a massive campus. Like I was just blown away. Like on the weekends you'll see families come and just hang out, kind of like Centennial Park in Sydney. Like families will just bring their kids and like bikes and like soccer balls and things and just hang out on the campus. So it's a really communal space, I think, because Taipei doesn't really have like a city center, so it's kind of activity spread out in different areas. So it's like a public space as much as it is a university.
Yeah, definitely. I remember one weekend I took a walk around the NTU, and I remember seeing this farm there. I was like, wow, in the middle of a city there's a farm. And like I went to the cafe there, and then I stopped by and I saw milk on the menu. I was like, oh, is this milk by any chance from the farm? And they're like, yeah, we have our own cows there. And I was blown away. So I just sat there just looking at the farm and having a glass of milk on a Saturday.
I remember being told by local students that the milk is so popular, because this is the thing, dairy we take for granted so much in Australia. Like, it's so inexpensive and really good here, whereas dairy in Asia is fairly expensive, like fresh dairy. And one of the local students was saying, like, the fresh milk from the farm, people would line up at like 5 a.m, and there's a limit to like 2 bottles each. And it sells until it sells out. And I was like, that is mind-blowing to think about, but it's just one of the quirks. There was just so many quirks about Taipei. I'm sure you would have experienced the same with Shanghai, but like there's just so many things that you're like, they've really thought it through. It's really cool.
It's insane.
Coming back to Sydney, did you both miss anything from Taipei or Shanghai, or and vice versa? When you were over there for, I guess, 6 months or a year, do you like, I really miss Australian cheese, or I don't know, something that you both really craved or missed?
Yeah, I think so Shanghai is just such a international kind of city that if you really crave something, you're bound to find it somehow. So one of those weekends I was actually craving a fish and chips. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go grab fish and chips, and I could find fish and chips. And another weekend I was like, oh, I really miss like sausage rolls. And there was this shop in Shanghai that selling sausage rolls, and they were from Australia. So it's just such an international city. I know for some of my friends, or going to such a, like China, such a place of different language and culture, it might be hard. But however, if you go to Shanghai or Beijing, these international cities, you won't feel as out of your comfort zone. So there will be some comfort food there that you might fall back on some weekends. So yeah, it's a good experience. Like, you're going out of your comfort zone, but not completely so much in the deep end that you got no help and you aren't reminded of home. So I think Shanghai is a really good place to go on exchange.
Do you miss anything from Shanghai?
Yeah, I missed probably the bund over there. Just like the night, the city lights over there, the hustling, bustling nature of Shanghai, and every weekend there was something to do. So much culture around there. You see the East and West like collide there with like the French concession. That's really nice over there as well. And yeah, it's just a really fast-paced kind of city that I think a lot of students would enjoy.
I think I'm similar. Like, I don't know if I missed any specific foods that much. I mean, there are a lot of things that I missed. I am vegetarian, so Taipei was it was really easy for me compared to a lot of the other Asian countries I've been to. So yeah, it was super duper easy. But yeah, I think I missed more just being able to cook and like be in the kitchen. I cooked a lot, I cook a lot at home, and so not being able to do that was like a little bit strange. But then being able to just try different foods all the time was really good. In saying that though, like, I remember the first week I got home here, I had so much like yogurt and cheese and like bread. And yeah, so just like little things like that, but it was never something that made it never kind of detracted from the experiences that I was having. I strangely actually miss sort of the noise. I don't know about you. I feel like when I first got there, I was like, oh, this is so strange. Like, I'm never going to be able to sleep, like barely slept. And then
what kind of noise was it? Sorry.
Just like
motorbikes?
Like, yeah, motorbikes, just loudness, like late into, like, That's one thing actually. I after arriving, I was such a morning person. I would get up like 5:30 in Sydney, and like my day would be like started. But in Asia, I guess when I first arrived, it was because of the heat, and it makes sense. Like people are all night owls. Like cities don't really come alive until like evening. And so everyone stays up really late. And so my whole sleep schedule just got thrown out of whack. And so I was going to bed so late, but then getting up so early for 8 a.m. Chinese classes. And so like sometimes I remember there'd be nights where I'd be out exploring and like biking around the city, get home at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then be like, crap, I'm going to sleep for 2 hours and then I'm going to class. Yeah, but like some of those are really fun because like people would just be awake all the time, especially in the summer as well. Like everything felt a lot more like carefree in the summer. And then once it started getting colder and rainier, it was like less people were outside. But yeah, the July, August, even the early 2 weeks of September, you just see people everywhere.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed it, I think you, Jessie, as well, is maybe like the night markets.
Oh my gosh.
They were there every night. I can't imagine that. I think in Asia, you just step down like from your building and there's everything just open there, and like you can late into the night, especially in summer, I think there's a lot of shops open, something to eat, something to do. Whereas in Australia, as everybody knows, a lot of things close quite early, around 5 p.m. or so. So I guess as a young person, you tend to want to gravitate to more noisier, kind of vibrant kind of things. And I guess Australia kind of lacks that kind of nightlife and accessibility to all those shops and things to do. Yeah.
Well, so outside of class and outside of, I guess, your formal programs, did you both go to any conferences or do anything outside of university that was really interesting? Jessie?
Yeah, there was heaps of stuff to do outside. I think that's something that we're so lucky to have being on the NCP, is that there is such a big network and there are so many connections. So a lot of opportunities would just sort of come up, and if you were free, you could jump on it. So a lot of the stuff that I got involved in while I was in Taiwan, at least, was stuff that was organised by the Australian office. So different events to celebrate different things, or if there were like study tours or delegations coming from Australia to Taiwan for another conference, they would have us come and just meet people and kind of chat about the program and what we've been up to, and just connect with like experts or people who had been working for a long time in specific fields, which was really cool. I was really lucky to be able to MC the Australia-New Zealand Chamber of Commerce Business Awards last year, which was really fun. It was really cool to meet so many business people, but also just kind of learn more about what they do in Taiwan and like how they're connecting different people and different companies, and sort of the way that the relationship between Taiwan and Australia is actually manifested. I think we kind of we don't ever hear about Taiwan. I remember before I left, people would be like, "Oh, have fun in Thailand," and that's such a common thing for so many exchange students. Had a similar experience. Like we would be like, "Oh, you know, all of my friends are like, oh yeah, we think you're gonna have the best time in Thailand." And so just kind of building people's awareness about that was really cool. And then what else? Oh yeah, I got to attend 2 big conferences. So one was in Taiwan towards the beginning of December last year. And that was run by the Ministry of Education, which was really fun. And it was a global youth trends forum where they brought delegations from all around the world to chat about different topics. So it was kind of organized like round tables. And that was really, really interesting and a really good way to connect with so many like-minded young people working on really cool things. So that was such an awesome experience. And then my, I guess, possibly the highlight of my year was attending in Jakarta the ASEAN Australia Youth Leaders Forum, or Young Leaders Forum, sorry, because I was part of the organising team for that. And that was like the first forum or the first sort of big project that we'd run as an organisation. and it went so well. And yeah, a similar thing, bringing people from across the region together to just meet each other, collaborate, share ideas, work together, and just become friends. Like that's like the coolest thing I think gaining out of the whole year is just there's so many people you meet across the region and you're like, I never would have met you in any other circumstance, but I can't imagine not like being able to connect with you and chat with you now, even though I'm home. Yeah, so those are probably the most memorable or like rewarding sort of outside of class experiences.
And with ASIP, I've heard of the conference or forum before, but what specifically is done, or like is what happens at the forum itself?
Yeah, so it was like a 4-day forum where it was a combination of like panel discussions with lots of different experts from a range of different fields, but focusing on the 3 key pillars that we had last year, which was, disaster resilience was one. So about increasing our government as well as just young people's ability to respond to disaster, which now seems fairly timely.
Wow.
Things like digital economy, which is something that's affecting a lot of countries in the region. And then the last one was about like counterterrorism and kind of dealing with like international political and security challenges for the region. And so, yeah, they were really, really fascinating. There were heaps of really cool academics as well as industry experts we got along to the panels. We were so lucky. We had the Secretary General of ASEAN actually speak at the opening ceremony, which was insane. I don't know how we managed to organize and set that up. We had a couple of side visits, which was really, really interesting. One at ASEAN Secretariat and one at Clue, which is like a big tech company. And then we also were able to have lots of like, I was lucky also to facilitate the 3rd day of we had like a sort of mini hackathon / like collaboration day, which was really cool. So there were just kind of a variety of like panels and workshops and just sort of those informal like lunch breaks or dinner break, like morning teas and afternoon teas for 40 young people, both who are working or students, to just chat to each other and meet each other and kind of get to know what everyone's been working on or why they're passionate about youth relations in the region.
And on a lighter note, sorry, Anthony. What were your thoughts on Jakarta? Did you like the city, or anything that stood out to you? Because this will be relevant later when I speak to Anthony.
Interesting. I absolutely adored Jakarta. It was my first time in Indonesia, and I'm super sad I only really had like a week because it was in the middle of classes. So, not classes. It was like in the mid-semester break for us. So our semester started in like mid-September, but then there was no like Christmas and New Year's. There was no break. Taiwan doesn't celebrate Christmas and like New Year's because the big break is at the end of January or like early February with Chinese New Year. And so we had like a mid-semester week where it was for mid-sem exams and stuff, but I didn't have any, so I managed to get that approved to miss like one class I think, and then just attend the forum and catch up. But it was amazing. I loved Jakarta. I am really keen to go back to Indonesia. I wish I had longer there because I didn't realize how vast Indonesia is just geographically, but also how huge the Indonesian population is and how many young people or how much of the population is under like 25. So it's really, really interesting. And the food is amazing, and just like, it was so nice being back in like an ASEAN country, I think.
And Anthony?
So back when I started my NCP journey in July last year, I went to the International Diplomacy Forum. So that was held in Bangkok at the UN over there. It was really nice. I think it was around about 3 days. We had a lot of guest speakers, some diplomats from the UN, and we I met a lot of people from all over the globe, mostly from Australia, America, and other different ASEAN nations over there. And one thing I really grasped at that conference was that everyone really had a passion, and they could speak about it. So some had like human rights, other topics as well. So everyone was just really passionate, and you could be really inspired over there to spark a movement of your own, or ask for help around that part. And we really learned about diplomacy, and it really sparked my interest more in international relations. I never knew that I enjoyed this kind of debate and topic, and I really want to look more into it. So the International Diplomacy Forum, which I really recommend attending for all students, it's really great 3-day experience, and you get to hear a lot about people's passions and what they want to do with their journey and their professional career.
Sounds like the Asia Indo-Pacific region, and ASEAN in particular, it's quite conducive to a lot of movements around diplomacy or social enterprise, because I think, would it be possibly because of, I guess there's a need for it, because there's still, a lot of the countries are still in a stage of development, and there's a lot of inherent entrepreneurial movements, and just like a need for it. And there's like a lot of startups. Like I remember being in Jakarta myself, and a lot of these unicorns just popped up, like Gojek, Grab, I believe. Yeah, Tokopedia. I think there was another travel one as well, but it was just
Traveloka.
Traveloka. There we go.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to see so much entrepreneurial like spirit happening in the region. And yeah, was there something that really surprised you, or was there something that you felt like there was a big difference compared to Australia, or was something that was really quite inspirational for you, or both of you?
Yeah, actually, I went on the 2018 new Colombo Plan Mobility Grant with actually Andrew, and I think we'll speak about that at a later date. But it was an awesome experience, and I think what Andrew said is very true, that the Indonesian market is very big, and seeing that everyone has a cell phone over there, so there's so much opportunity to capitalize on that, and just grow that market over there. So very interested in Indonesia. It's definitely developing, and it's up and coming, and I think Australia really needs to talk to its neighbors, especially Indonesia. So I think there's lots of opportunities in Indonesia and the Southeast Asian region.
I would agree mostly with that. I think I was also super lucky to be able to have gone on a short program as well back in the end of 2017, early 2018, in the Philippines for a month, and that was incredible. But yeah, I think something that I've come to sort of observe traveling and like living for short periods of time in Southeast Asia is that a lot of what you were saying is that there's an inherent like entrepreneurial spirit, or like people, I think something really interesting, I remember meeting this young girl in the Philippines, and she was saying like, oh, I had no idea that this was called like entrepreneurship. I just do it because I don't have any other choice. And I think that was a really interesting way of perceiving it, because in Australia, we seem to think that entrepreneurship is something we choose to do because we don't want to follow like a traditional career path. But for lots of people, and lots of young people, especially in Asia or ASEAN specifically, or those like developing economies, it's really interesting that that's the norm. Like there is no choice. It's you do that or you aren't able to support your family.
That's right.
And so it's really interesting that I guess when we get to meet and speak to these people, they're empowered by having sort of something to call what they're doing, or kind of something to identify as in some ways. But also it's really interesting that you mentioned all that entrepreneurial stuff, because I do think that there is a lot happening in that space, especially in the big cities, but it's really cool to see what's happening in some of the rural communities and the rural provinces with social impact and social enterprises. I think that's something that's developing almost in parallel, alongside. It's like all these social enterprises are kind of filling the gap between traditional companies and businesses and nonprofits.
Yeah.
They're kind of somewhere in the middle. It's a bit of a grey area, but a lot of them are doing such important work, supporting local communities in a way that I guess big companies that are developed in big cities aren't able to, or don't quite understand how to support these local communities.
In your time in the Philippines, what did you get up to over there?
Yeah, there was, what didn't we get up to? But we spent a lot of time doing a lot of field work. So going out to visit lots of different communities. We had some Filipino students, university students, who were kind of like paired up as buddies with us. And so we got to visit a lot of different rural communities and Indigenous communities, facilitated by a social enterprise that helps bridges these communities, and they know these communities quite well. And so, a lot of it was field work and like empathy research, which was really interesting, as well as like co-designing. So a lot of that design thinking, and it's become very buzzwordy now, but like honestly, a lot of it was just speaking to people as simply as that, to actually learn about issues, and not just kind of put our lens and be like, oh, maybe they'll need like an app for this or need something for this, but actually what do these communities need? And it's really cool to see, like even last week, like the community that I was able to visit, they've been struggling a little bit in terms of like their produce is not being able to be delivered to the local towns to be sold and stuff. And so they've had kind of volunteers on the ground in the Philippines in those regions, like kind of come in and like take up those roles. So it's cool to see that things are still happening, and those sort of first relationships that we've built with these people don't just disappear after we're gone. Like we're still able to support from afar, and just like share the message, which is really, really, really cool. Yeah,
I remember whilst I was in Jakarta, I was doing a hackathon, and Anthony was there with me, and the team that won the hackathon for first prize, their idea was to have a startup company that would directly ship rice, like production and rice products from the farmers to the consumers. And like, to me, I think that was such a great idea. But then stepping back now, I look back and it was by a predominantly Indonesian team. And I think they just understood what the market needed, what people needed more so than us. Because I think a lot of us were just coming in with our own lenses and our own perspectives of what Indonesian people wanted. And one team was like a travel app, or another team was doing something that was very much needed for us rather than the Indonesian people. And that just stood out to me when I was there in Jakarta. And just to your point, Jessie, with that. And with Anthony, his mum just walked in, so we're going to give him some time. Do you have anything to add? No, that's good.
Wait, so with that, I don't think so. I think you summed it up pretty well with the Indonesia thing. Yeah, like I remember that startup day, and I remember the Indonesian team working on that, and it was just beautiful to see that they won it, and they had prizes as well. So I think they got to use the co-working space and actually develop that idea, which was awesome. So props to them.
And the last component, language training. I know, Anthony, I believe you're Cantonese, mate?
Yeah, I'm Cantonese. My parents are from Hong Kong, but I was born in Australia, so I'm an Australian-born Chinese.
Yeah. So how was learning Mandarin for you? Was like the difference? I know there is a difference. I just don't know what the difference is. So would you like to tell me?
Yeah. So Mandarin. I'll wait for that sound. So Mandarin. It has 4 tones. But I think Cantonese has around, I don't even remember, like 7, 8 tones.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very hard language to pick up, Cantonese. And so it has helped me learn Mandarin pretty fast. I think some words sound the same, or they have different tones, but they're mostly the same. And I remember when I was little, I grew up going to Chinese school. So originally, I was actually learning traditional characters, and I think around the traditional characters and simplified, they share a certain percentage. I'm not certain, but a majority of them are pretty much the same. So if you learn traditional, you can most likely read simplified. And in mainland China, they use simplified characters. So over there, also I started my Chinese journey in high school as well, continuing on from my Chinese school days. And
You went to Guilin, right?
Yeah, so actually in high school I learned around 2-3 years, but however when I went to Guilin, I felt that my Chinese ability just took off, honestly, because I was living at the school, I was studying there. So there's this environment that you get that you don't get in Australia, because Australia, it's very hard to find people to speak to in Mandarin unless you go out of your way to do that. But at the school, they've already got that there, so you can speak to the interns there. So they're in around about university, and they're happy to help you around. So I think getting settled into China was really hard. Opening that bank account, getting the phone, it was pretty hard. So, but those interns really helped me out, and I was able to speak Mandarin to them and practice my Mandarin, and they could practice their English as well. So it was awesome to have those buddies there, live in that school, speak Chinese to my teachers, other friends.
In a rural area as well?
It wasn't. So Guilin is like a tier 3 city. So for your understanding, Shanghai and Beijing, they're like tier 1 cities.
Yep.
So Guilin is less developed than those really big mega cities. So they still had shopping malls and everything, but everyone mostly spoke Mandarin or their dialect. So Guilin has its own dialect, but a majority of them speak Mandarin. And so you would be challenged when you go out to speak with people. They don't speak English, so you have to speak Mandarin. And that worked to my advantage, that I wasn't going to fall back on English. I was just going to have to speak to Mandarin to communicate to these people. So I think if other NCP scholars are listening to this podcast, I'd really recommend you to fork out the money, but it might be a bit more expensive, but go to a language school, go and live there, go and talk to the students and the teachers. I think that environment will help you with your Mandarin abilities, because going to a university, there's often a lot of expats or a lot of other students from other countries who come along, and maybe during class you're going to be speaking Mandarin, but after class I think everyone just reverts back to English, and it's not that helpful. So being in an environment that always is speaking Mandarin, or the language that you're learning, that's very important. And I think those 2 months at the beginning of my NCP journey really, really helped me out to accelerate my Mandarin speaking abilities.
And Jessie, if I'm not mistaken, you're Vietnamese?
Yes.
So how has Mandarin been different, or what challenges have you faced whilst you're learning
definitely. I feel like it's been really interesting. I think also studying Mandarin in Taiwan is a whole different experience in itself. Like Anthony mentioned, Taiwan uses traditional characters. So I had done a little bit of really basic Mandarin at UTS. I didn't love the way that it was taught at UTS, only because I just felt like I didn't really improve as much as I wanted to, and that I think is a combination of also just not really seeing the point of learning Mandarin, or like accelerating or learning at a speed that I was like happy with. I guess a lot of it was also because the textbooks that we have here are nothing like the textbooks that you can get in country. I think, like, I know textbooks are heavy, but I definitely brought home a few with me just because they're so hard to get here, and the way that they're written just makes so much sense because it's these language schools or these university language departments have been doing it for decades. Like, they've taught diplomats, they've taught like business people, so they really know what they're doing. So for me, I found I was almost starting from scratch in Mandarin, but I did find that having that structure at the beginning of my NCP program was really, really valuable. I guess a lot of the NCP scholars who have a Chinese background, like a family background, a lot of them I know can speak or understand quite well but can't read as well. And so I found kind of starting from scratch really gave me an edge in terms of reading and writing. I know a lot of us feel like writing isn't as useful anymore, which I would somewhat agree with. It's really easy to type in Mandarin now, especially with phones and laptops. So I would say writing itself isn't really, it wasn't one of my priorities. I just really wanted to be comfortable speaking and understanding and reading. So that's what I really focused on with all of my language training. I guess two things to add on to what Anthony's already said is that it was really motivating, again, to be in a place where everyone spoke Mandarin constantly and you were just constantly passively learning. So I would try and make the most whenever I went out. I would try and read signs and read menus and like everything I could read in Mandarin, I would try and read. Pleco, if you're studying Mandarin, is like your best friend. Love it so much. So yeah, that helped with just really rapid vocab acquisition. But in terms of also looking visibly Asian, I think that really helped with not reverting to English, because when you walked in anywhere, people would just assume that you'd be able to speak a bit of Mandarin, so it would just get spoken to you on a first instance rather than English. And so I found that really helpful for me to kind of break that habit of just reverting to English whenever I got a bit shy or like nervous or didn't feel as comfortable with my language skills. And then the final thing is like making local friends was so motivating to improve Chinese as fast as I could. And it was a really fun way to learn as well, because you would just be talking about something that you cared about or something that you wanted to learn more about, and they would be able to teach you, and you just sort of pick up the way that they would express things, or like there'd be like not necessarily like rude slang, but just like more colloquial ways of expressing things that are less formal than a textbook. Because
I'm sure
like,
there's differences in the textbook to how you would learn outside.
Exactly. So like I would like use and practice some of the sentences I'd learned in a textbook, but then my friends would be like, no, don't say it like that, that's so strange. And also learning about some of the differences between how it's spoken in mainland China and in Taiwan was fascinating, like some ways things are expressed. And it was just really, really cool to learn sort of about the cultural development of Mandarin as a language as well. So I would say definitely, I think language training is something that a lot of scholars kind of overlook compared to taking on more internships. But I think if you do have an interest in that country and you're interested in that language, I would say give it a go. I loved private language, like one-on-one classes, and I wish that I'd started them earlier. I don't think I've ever improved. Compared to small classes. The small classes are still fantastic, like better than anything you'd get in Australia, I feel. But the one-on-one was like, I was just speaking in Mandarin for like 4 or 5 hours a day. So with my teacher, and like you really get to know your teachers, they're like your friends. And so it's exhausting, absolutely, but it was just so worth it. Like if you want to learn in a short amount of time. And I guess with Vietnamese, my Vietnamese, I would say, is fairly good. Like it's not like, I'm not going to be an interpreter or something, but I feel like I can get my point across, and I could operate in like a work setting if necessary. But I think it did help, like as Anthony said, with the tones. Vietnamese, I think, has like 6-7 tones as well. So having the sort of mindset of a tonal language. I also found that having Vietnamese, I think Vietnamese is about 30% Cantonese, 30% Mandarin, a little bit mix of like French, like terms and like kind of history as well. And so that helped me with just understanding specific concepts that were hard to explain, because in English we never really learn like what like auxiliary verbs or like specific grammatical things are.
Yeah.
And so when they're trying to explain, or when teachers are trying to explain that in English, you're like, what on earth? Like, I don't even know what that's called in English. But as soon as I kind of tried to use my very basic level of Vietnamese to like translate things, or almost at some points I would use Vietnamese to learn Mandarin. That helped a lot, because there's a lot of overlap with concepts and sounds, I guess, as like Sino root languages. So yeah, I think if you're into languages, definitely spend a bit of time and like do language training just on its own. It's a really nice break between study components and internships as well. If you still want to be learning, but also realize that you do, like, NCP is a really full-on program. Like to everyone it sounds like fun and games, and it is really fun, but it's also a full-time job. And it's really exhausting, and like, I guess to be in country for like the maximum of the 18 months, you really need to know when to like kind of accelerate, and then when to kind of put a bit of the brakes on, so that you can just actually recharge and like reflect and kind of slow down a bit. So yeah, language training was that sort of slow down fun part for me.
I agree with that. I think language training was really full on for me. Those 2 months were like Monday to Friday, and I was around about 4 hours a day. But if you think about it, 4 hours is not just classes and then you're off. Like, you got homework, you got to practice, and you need to spend time on that and reflect on what you learned for the day and use that vocabulary within your day-to-day talk. So I think that was quite exhausting in that, but also really rewarding, because I think one of the bigger things that I found about learning Mandarin was speaking to the people in China, because I think their way of life and their culture really is polarizes Australian culture, and you get to understand how they grew up and their way of thinking. And out of that, I spoke to some really amazing people while I was over there, and I think I really, really enjoy that aspect, listening to other people's stories. And yeah, so that's what I really enjoyed about language.
Yeah, well, I'm very jealous of you both being able to start your NTP, but moving forward.
Andrew?
I
You'll be out there.
Yeah, I missed. What location were you headed off to?
My primary was China, and then secondary
Shanghai as well.
Shanghai and Beijing.
Oh, cool.
And secondary was still up in the air, but I was maybe even going to do my internship in an Asian country, maybe Vietnam.
Cool.
Yeah, that was my plan. But great segue, Jessie, until where both of you want to move into in the coming months, in the coming year or so. What are both of your plans? And once you graduate, what do both of you want to do career-wise, but also outside of your careers? Anthony or Jessie?
Yeah, sure. So since coming back to Australia in late March, I was able to enroll just in time for university. So I'm doing 2 subjects this semester and 2 subjects the next, and then I'm graduating. So that's my expected graduation date. So I just thought originally I was going to spend probably the 18 months overseas, but however that hasn't really gone to plan, but that doesn't matter. Really hope to be out there in Beijing to resume my internship around early January 2021. So looking forward to that. And I will be in Beijing for around 6 months doing the internship. And I think I'll go from there. I'm just looking forward to the opportunities in China. I think there's a lot over there, and also in the Indo-Pacific region. So I haven't thought too much, because I guess COVID-19 really hits you in the face a lot of the time with like your planning. So I've just learned to take it as it comes and have kind of loose plans on what I want to do. So but I guess recently I've been more picking up my interest in international relations. I found that UTS has a Australia-China Relations Institute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an independent research institute that focuses on the Australia-China relationship. So I really want to get involved in that, and also, I guess, help UTS students who are going to study abroad to pick China or any other Indo-Pacific countries as their choice. Because I think I might have been guilty myself if I had not gone to China. I might have gone to maybe the UK to travel all the European countries.
Yeah.
But I think that living in Asia will give you a really different perspective on life and maybe even your career. So I definitely encourage everyone to go and apply for the NCP. It's a great program, great initiative. And also, to go and experience life abroad in, say, Shanghai or Taipei. And I just want to really help international students studying in Australia. I recently picked up a job at UTS where I handle the WeChat communications for Chinese international students who are affected by COVID-19. I think helping them has really given me just this thought that it's been really great to give back to Australia, to the university industry, to help my fellow students, because I feel like sometimes they might be forgotten or ostracized by the local students or by the Australian community. But I think this role has really helped me, in a sense, to really give back to Australia. So I find that really awesome, and I hope to do more for the Australia-China relationship and pursue my international relations kind of interest in the future.
I think Anthony's touched on a few points, but it's really hard to plan ahead, I guess, in this stage. But as soon as we get the green light to head back to Asia, I'm going to be jumping back on a plane out to Taiwan to finish up my language training over there. And then also to finish off my NCP program, doing an internship in Penang in Malaysia with the Women's Centre for Change, hopefully, if it all goes ahead. We've had to keep pushing back, and I've been in constant communication with them, but the laws and their restrictions are changing all the time as well. So that would be really interesting, particularly for me, because I think that would really help with sort of the general path that I want to pursue. Really passionate about women's rights, especially legal, economic, and how that impacts their social lives as well. Particularly with, I'm really interested in that kind of political science. I have, I guess, the law background now, but I'm not super sure if I want to pursue that sort of career path. I think all of us in the NCP program have some sort of interest in international relations, but with a specific angle, depending on the degree or the field that you've kind of specialized in. So I would love to be back in Asia, working with people, like local people, as well as like friends I've made on some of those really cool projects. I don't have anything really set in stone, but that's the sort of general direction that I'm hoping to kind of follow in the next year and a bit. I know potentially Canberra is on my horizon. A lot of people have mentioned that to me in the past, and I can definitely see myself down there. I loved it when we went down for the training pre-departure. So potentially, but at this point, who knows? I just know that I will be in Asia towards the end of this year, and probably for the first bit of 2021 as well.
Nice.
If you do relocate to Canberra, there's not going to be much noise or sound, unfortunately.
That's true. They've got a lake though, which the really different, beautiful. That's one thing I also really miss about Taiwan. Actually, I forgot. I have always been a little bit of a runner, but living in Taiwan and Taipei, so many bike and walking paths along the riversides. I've never seen so much greenery and so many mountains in my life in a big city. And so I really miss just being able to walk 15 minutes and feel like you're not even in the city anymore. Like it's
Mm.
just rivers and mountains. So yeah, super miss that, because like at the moment here, I've run around my block maybe like 50 times in the last week. I'm getting a little bit sick of it.
Yeah. Andrew, I
Yeah.
guess, what do you want to do with the NCP? What are your goals? And I guess a really big component of the NCP is giving back to Australia. So what do you hope to do in that space?
Wow. Great question, Anthony. Yeah, with a lot of 2020 scholars, particularly China as well. So I had to adapt my program from the get-go when the first initial developments were happening in January, end of January. So then I changed my study component to Singapore. But only yesterday or the day before, UCID and US in Singapore, they completely cancelled all of their exchange programs for next semester. And this is my final year. So I think for myself, I think with the advice and with the support of the NCP, I'm allowed to waive that component, and I'll be able to just do my language training and my internship components. So I'm still definitely very much looking forward to that next year. So the plan is to head to China, either most likely Beijing, for roughly 4 or 5 months to do language training full time, and also hopefully to do a project or work part-time as well as an intern, possibly for Chamber of Commerce or any other sort of institutions around there. And then I will most likely in that time be coming back to Australia to do my graduation. I can't miss that. And then I'll be coming back, most likely to another country. And earlier this year, I went to Vietnam in February, early February, for a program which was unfortunately cancelled, but it was looking about social entrepreneurship in Vietnam. And we were scheduled to go to the rural areas of Vietnam to do similar to what Jessie was doing in the Philippines. And I hope to either do that for my internship, to join a social enterprise, or to either work in the city. I think I'm still very open to a lot of the opportunities, and I know there's a lot for me to still learn. So that's the plan for the remaining end of the year. And then after that, it's still a big question mark, but from just listening to both of your stories and just hearing a lot of accounts from past alumni, the NCP, I think, opens a lot of doors that you didn't know were there. And I hope that's what's going to happen for me. And when I do come back to Sydney, or if I do stay in Asia, most likely going back to Sydney. I do get homesick quite easily. So yeah, that's my plan, mate. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it though.
Sounds great, Andrew. I'm sure you'll be out there, and hopefully I'll see you in Beijing very soon.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I think that brings probably to the end of our conversation. But before we do, I've just got some quick questions, 5 questions, just so that people, or for me, for my entertainment as well, but for people to know more about you both.
Mm-hmm.
So who would like to go first? I've got, Anthony or Jessie. Would you?
Don't mind.
All right, Jessie, you can go first. Anthony?
Yeah. Go, Jessie.
I just
all
mute my.
Okay, Jessie. Anthony, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, just the first answer that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Right? Jakarta or Shanghai?
Jakarta.
Blog or vlog?
Blog.
Wait, which one?
Blog.
B. Okay. Airplane food or airport? Food court food.
Food court.
A role model that you look up to who's in the public space. So it can't be your family, obviously. But
I think Kevin Rudd.
Kevin Rudd. Did not expect that one. All right. Biggest regret?
Not having more food in China.
Okay. All right. Biggest achievement?
Biggest achievement. I think the NCP, hands down.
Yeah. Top 5 foods you had during your travels?
I think, there's just so much. I think So there's this 红烧牛肉面. It's like braised like beef with like noodles. That was really nice. I think down in Guangzhou, I had some really good dim sum over there. The xiaolongbaos in like Shanghai, they're really, really awesome. Also peanut noodles in like Shanghai as well. They're really great. And I think in Taipei, I can't not say this, bubble tea. That was like, I tasted authentic bubble tea over there. So it's really nice and I miss that. Yeah.
Awesome. And last one is describe your dream career, location, responsibilities, companies, anything. And also, you can't prepare, Jesse. Your questions are completely different, by the way. Anthony?
Dream job. I guess, I think I'm a bit selfish and I love to travel. So my dream job is to travel around the world, especially Asia, and blog about it and talk to other people, experience the culture like a local, and share this with a lot of other people who want to do that and see other people's cultures and open up their minds. That is definitely my dream job and I'm working towards it. Hopefully it comes true.
I hope so too, mate. So I can come with you. All right, great. Thanks, Anthony. Jessie?
Yeah, hit me.
All right. Law or social inquiry?
Social inquiry, for sure.
Rice or noodles?
Oh, noodles.
Okay.
I think I would have said rice, but honestly, before I was living in Asia, I didn't really eat that much rice. Like I ate a lot of rice growing up and then kind of just got a bit bored. But the noodles in Taiwan are just next level good. They're so good.
All right. A talent, photographic memory or fast reading?
Photographic memory, because I can already read pretty fast, I think.
Oh, okay. Also same question as Anthony. Role model that you look up to in the public space?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I guess maybe right now, like any female leader who's running a country through this pandemic, Tsai Ing-wen, Taiwan, or Jacinda Ardern, any of the really young prime ministers in Europe that are female. I feel like it's endless. Hayley Winchcombe, the chair of ASIP, amazing.
Awesome. Your biggest fear?
Biggest fear? I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Like, I'm not really scared of heights. Maybe if I was like buried alive or something, that would be really scary.
I thought it would be not resuming NCP.
I mean, that would be horrific, but I guess not as terrifying as being, probably buried alive. That would be horrific.
Interesting. Okay. Your biggest love?
Oh my God. Probably bread. Like, I love bread so much. I've got a bread Instagram. Like, I reviewed a lot of bread in Asia because people kind of had all told me, no, you're never going to find any good bread in Asia. And I was just trying to prove people wrong.
I remember you saying that. Is it just because like the bread's sweet and not like?
Yeah, it's just very different to bread we're used to. Like, it's different to Western bread. It's very sweet or like quite soft, like Japanese style bread. But there were some amazing bakeries and some very unique baked goods that you can get only in Asia as well. So it's really delicious.
Okay. Top 5 things you cannot live without.
Top 5 things I can't live without. I guess phone. Should I think what else? Phone. Maybe like a journal. Like, oh, actually, I know. Phone, Kindle is like my 2 big ones. A comfy pair of like track pants for plain or any other like lounging around purposes. What else can't I live without? I feel like there's not much. That's the one thing that being on NCP has taught me, actually, that I really don't need as much as I thought I did. I think I left with like maybe 25 kilos of stuff. I came back with like maybe 17.
Whoa.
I just like got rid of a lot of stuff because it was like moldy and damp. It's very humid in Asia. That's something that I had not expected from Taiwan, at least. So yeah, I think maybe that's it. Maybe okay. So phone, Kindle, what did I say? Lip balm, maybe, and
Trackies.
yeah, trackies. Yeah. Oh, maybe one more. Coffee. I can't live without coffee.
Anthony,
Actually,
what were you saying?
it's actually surprising in Asia. You'll find not bad coffee, like especially in big cities. I think you'll find pretty good coffee over there. And one thing on Jessie's note, I think, NTP will make most people a minimalist because, like,
you're just living out of a suitcase.
Exactly. You feel like a digital nomad or something. So yeah, it's awesome that you realize a lot of like material possessions that you have, they actually don't serve much purpose, and it's actually great having all of that baggage just not with you, and it's a great experience. Yeah.
Thanks for the wise advice, Anthony. And your last question, Jessie. Describe
Sorry,
your.
it's so loud.
Describe your dream house, location, layout, furnishings.
God. Oh, I think at the moment it would be a tiny house. Like I've wanted a tiny house to build a tiny house for ages. So yeah, probably a tiny house, either in the middle of like the forest or like near the beach somewhere. Furnishings, I don't know, like minimalism, don't need much stuff. I'll sleep on the ground.
There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jessie. Thanks, Anthony. I think we'll wrap it up there. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.